the October 12th, 2022 Finance Executive Committee meeting. I'm Alex Wan. I'm chair of the committee. I'm joined by Councilmember Howard Shook, who's vice chair to my left. The two of us, unfortunately, do not constitute a quorum, but until we do get quorum, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with parts of the agenda that we can conduct without taking a vote. So with that, what that means is we're going to move directly into public comment. And I'm looking at y'all. Are we okay to? All right. So with that, we have one person signed up, and that is Prophet Curtis. I can't see the rest of that. Martin. As a reminder, public comment, we are allotted 3 minutes to speak. You'll see a timer on the screen. As that winds down to 0, I'll ask that you wind down your comments as well. If you have them written and don't finish, you can always provide that to us.
Okay, give me a minute, context. Please. I want y'all to hear something.
All right, so with that, let's go ahead and, are you?
This is mighty fast. Y'all ain't going through nothing. Y'all just.
Sir, as I mentioned, we don't have quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the items where we don't have to take a vote to keep the agenda moving. So with that.
But you should have a quorum, though.
No, sir. The only thing we need a quorum for is to take a vote. So with that, we're going to continue on with the agenda. We're joined by Councilmember Keisha Sean Waits. Let's go ahead and put his 3 minutes up, and you can get going. Thank you.
Yeah, again, my name is Prophet Jesus Christ, Lord Jesus Christ. This nation was founded on. I want y'all to hear this. 5 months ago in Kentucky, a black girl kills her kids.
Jermaine says he saw them make that same walk less than an hour before police say James murdered them.
It was 45 minutes prior to it. I was coming back from Speedway, her and Skylar. And you know, she had some, I noticed she had some hot shoes in a bag of hot shoes. I was like, girl, you like him hot shoes? And she was like, yes, sir.
Jermaine says his friend James came across the street shortly after, looking strange.
I'm looking at her coming, you know, like, something ain't right. You know, she don't look right. Look like she got on a red bandana going across her forehead, you know. And once she got closer, I realized, like, she didn't have any, you know, underwear, any bottom clothing on. She was basically half naked. She only had on a shirt, and I realized that she had blood on her from head to toe.
Lexington police say they were called to Parkway Plaza Apartments on Rogers Road at around 7:30 Monday evening after reports of an injured person. Jermaine says he led them to the apartment where they found 13-year-old Dion and 5-year-old Skylar. Both of them died at UK Hospital. The Fayette County coroner says from multiple stab wounds.
I was like, I'm going in there, you know, basically I'm going in there. As soon as she opens up the door, I see the little girl, Skylar, laying on the floor, curled up like she was asleep with a little stuffed animal. Came back, I immediately turned around and just walked down here. I was mad at first, so I was mad. I was pissed. I was hurt. I was everything. I was destroyed.
But while Jermaine is dealing with his grief, he's also not villainizing James. He says she was dealing with a possible eviction, mental health issues, and the help she needed, she never got.
Okay. So you see where I'm going with this? You hear it? Black girl kills her 2 kids. This is 5 months ago. Because she couldn't get no help for mental health. I didn't make this up. If you want to just look it up, you can look it up on YouTube. Lexington, Kentucky girl kills her 2 kids. Went to people for help in mental health, couldn't get it. Now her 2 kids are dead. A black girl. So y'all don't understand. See, you're not getting it. You're not. You ain't getting it, and the church ain't getting it either. Y'all not getting it. Now, this man grieving with 2 kids gone of his. He went to the city and couldn't get no help.
All right. Prophet Curtis, thank you for your remarks. With that, that concludes our public comment, correct? All right, then we'll continue moving on with the agenda. Next item up is presentations. First one is Atlanta Information Management Quarterly Update. Mr. Sankey, as you're coming up, I did want to just clarify, we did a little bit of shuffling in terms of presentations for this meeting and next meeting. Next meeting, we're going to have the Gulch as well as Invest Atlanta. So I appreciate the flexibility of those that are presenting today. So, Mr. Sankey, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chair Wan and members of the Finance Executive Committee. I am Jason Sankey, Chief Information Officer, overseeing the Department of Atlanta Information Management, otherwise known as AIM. I want to start by thanking the AIM team for their continued hard work and commitment to our vision, our mission, and our core values. Our mission is to advance Atlanta by consistently delivering innovative, reliable, secure, and user-focused technology solutions. As reported previously, AIM is made up of 7 main divisions, including infrastructure and technology, information security, enterprise project management, utilities, technology services, the Department of Aviation, city operations, and administrative offices. Our personnel salary budget for fiscal year 2023 is $8,268,719. As of September 30, we are forecasting roughly an $8.8 million spend. This is due to several positions that were vacated and subsequently backfilled in fiscal year 2022. This dashboard represents both our personnel and non-personnel operating budget, forecast, and cumulative budget consumption. Many of our obligations are paid throughout the year, so we do expect this trend to fluctuate over time as these obligations become due. However, we are working to capture budget forecasts for anticipated spend so we have a more accurate representation of budget consumption. On the next slide, as part of our strategy, we are laser focused on reducing the total cost of ownership throughout the enterprise. And this is an example of how migrating to an enterprise solution will save the city roughly $177,000 annually. And we also have identified roughly $4 million that we can save on an annual basis. And we are continuing to work through those efforts to realize these savings. On the next slide, thus far this year, we have seen an increase in tickets both received and resolved when compared to the same time last year. We are also seeing an impact to our target SLAs due to resource constraints. At the budget briefing, I mentioned that we were in the process of implementing changes to delineate service requests from incidents. And at the beginning of this fiscal year, we did make that delineation. And just as a reminder, an incident is an unplanned disruption in technology, and a service request is a request to fulfill a service like a password reset. This next graph represents the number of incidents created and resolved thus far this year compared to last year. As you can see, in the first quarter of the calendar year, we received and resolved tickets at a higher rate compared to subsequent quarters, and we have a consistent cumulative total over time. On this next graph, you will see a significant increase in service requests that were created and resolved this year versus last year. This is partly due to the realignment of tickets that I mentioned. Additionally, we have requests that we resolve outside of the ticketing process, so we have been working diligently to get all requests within our system. This next graph represents the type of incidents received. System access and application issues are consistently the largest category received. And I will mention that we continue to implement problem management protocols to reduce repeat incidents from occurring. The next slide represents our service requests. Our largest category remains requesting or modifying system access, followed by application management and configuration. Moving on to our outages, on the next slide, we have reported less outage occurrences and hours impacting business operations when compared to the same time last year. We also implemented enhanced system monitoring in July to better track both application and network availability. Moving to our project data, we have a total of 126 active projects, of which 2 are in critical status. 2 are in caution status and 1 is in critical status. We are also in the process of realigning our health reporting criteria to ensure we are in proper alignment with best practices and industry benchmarks. We have opened a total of 67 new projects and closed 40 through the end of September. And I would like to spend a few moments just touching on some of our FY23 highlights. Our strategy consists of 5 pillars: strengthening the core, increasing alignment, innovate and accelerate, application modernization, and workforce planning and development. Within strengthening the core, we are focused on migrating critical and high priority applications to the cloud. We are working on strengthening our workforce resilience, thus eliminating single points of failure. We are working to upskill our staff and remediate gaps in our operational model, reducing the total number of applications throughout the enterprise to gain efficiencies and reduce overall run costs. Within increasing alignment, we are enhancing our SLAs to align with customer needs. We are working with departments like Customer Service 311 to improve the customer service experience through technology. We are working with departments to align technology roadmaps across the enterprise, and we are establishing a robust PMO framework that, again, aligns to industry best practices. We are also expanding our efforts to proactively manage our vendor relationships. We want to make sure that we are receiving the desired outcomes from our contracts, and to do this, we have implemented performance management, relationship management, risk management, and contract management. Within innovation and acceleration, we're expanding our efforts in smart city initiatives by creating an ecosystem throughout the city. We are implementing an Office of Digital Transformation to really lean into user-centered design development and AI solutions. We are also in the process of creating an enterprise data-driven strategy where we're producing data-driven outcomes for the city. Within application modernization, we are focusing on automating processes to enhance efficiencies throughout the city and completing our application rationalization initiatives. And lastly, in our workforce and development, we are working on building a pipeline of talent through internships, apprenticeships. We are also looking at improving our recruiting and retention practices and succession planning. We are addressing gaps in skills and proactively managing staff performance. And I wanted just to bring up, at the last FEC, there were some questions that came about regarding Infotech Research Group, LLC. Just to provide clarification, they do provide reports based on their deep dive analysis that they perform within AIM, and we'd be happy to share the outcomes of that. And they do not make recommendations on products. What they do is they provide the research. So as an example, I talked about aligning to industry benchmarks and best practices. They will do the research to identify what those best practices are, as well as a roadmap to help us get there. With that, I want to thank you for your time, and I would welcome any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sankey. Questions from my colleagues? Mr. Shook.
Yeah, thank you. Unless I misread or missed something, you had the number of filled positions. What about your vacancy rate?
Currently, we do not have any funded vacancies, so all of our positions are filled.
That's interesting. and commendable. You rely on a lot of outside support from different entities. Can you give, and if you don't have this right now, that's fine, but I have always been and remain curious to know if you know the equivalent or ballpark amount of FTEs dedicated to supporting your department, and or could you refresh us as to what the budget is for outside contracting? And if you don't have that here, that's fine. But
I can get that information for
okay,
you.
because I'd like to be kind of caught up on that. And then, have y'all completed your relocation?
Relocation?
Well, back down,
Yes.
Downstairs?
The renovation has been completed, and we are back in that space.
and how's that working out?
It's working out well.
'Cause in the past, there were some problems with that space.
We do have a challenge with the smell every once in a while,
Well,
being on the ground
I
floor.
wasn't going to bring that up, but. So that is still an issue that's being worked on?
It is.
Has the problem been identified?
It has.
Okay, would that be from the adjacent parking space?
No, I believe it's from the way the sewer line runs on the ground floor. But I would have to defer for details to Dean.
Okay, it would be nice to get that cleared up for the city employees. And then, so has everyone moved? Are you at 100%? Everyone's moved in down there?
We're currently hybrid, but we do have representation on the first floor, on the ground floor.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We are currently in a hybrid, working, some people are working remotely 2 to 3 days a week, and other people in the office 2 to 3 days. So we have a hybrid model right now, but we are back in the space.
But what are your, and I guess the way the administration currently has orchestrated things, as a department head, you have a lot to say about the flexibility and who works where. What are your long-term, what's the long-term goal? I mean, is that manageable and sustainable long-term, or eventually would you like to have everyone together, or is this kind of the new normal?
There are certain positions that are better served being on site. So in user support, when you have anything that is customer facing, but we also have some positions that work fine in a teleworking environment. So we're still trying to figure out what that new normal is, but we're making sure that we have appropriate coverage for customer facing positions.
Thank you.
Other questions? I've got a couple of them. I mean, the number that you threw out there of $4 million of potential savings for consolidating applications or enterprise versus individual licenses, that budget savings would end up showing up in each department's IT expenditure line item, right? Not in yours. If your annual budget's $8 million, $4 million of it isn't simply for licenses, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I mean, that I think is a very significant value add. I mean, because, you know, yeah, so I appreciate the fact that you're leaning into that. I want to lean into the staffing question as well that Councilmember Shook brought up, that, you know, you have 103, I think, positions, 103 rather. And, you know, as we go into the next year and the next budget conversation, whether that's the appropriate ratio for a city of our size in terms of multiple departments, the number of people, you know, enterprise operations as well. So just keep that in mind, that we look to you to kind of guide us in terms of what needs you might have, and what the best practices are on that side.
Understood.
And then finally, you know, I think with the incident at the airport recently, you know, and even the city's experience before, I think the constant threat of cyber attacks and the integrity and security of our IT system. Now, understandably, that, you know, we've moved a lot of stuff up into the cloud, and less of it is necessarily in hardware and servers that are on site. I'm hoping, the likelihood of those continued incidents or attempts is only going to increase. And I guess my question for you is, aside from just potentially software that can be the first line of defense, part of it is also the human factor as well. And so what sort of education and preparation is your department providing the 9,000 employees we have so that we're not doing stupid things like opening bad emails or virus-infected emails, or even doing things that would then give someone with bad intent an opening into our infrastructure?
Sure. So we have annual mandatory training, and when you're talking about the 8,000 employees, really the most vulnerable place we have is email. Right. So clicking on a link or opening an attachment. So what we're doing is we have remedial training for those individuals when we have these targeted phishing campaigns. So you may have seen some emails that look weird. Well, if people click on them, we actually get a report, and we reach out to that department, and we talk about the list, and we get those people on a remedial track. So that is the big line of defense from an employee standpoint. But then from a staffing standpoint, we have internal as well as vendor partners, as Councilmember Shook mentioned, that we collaborate to make sure that we stay secure from a tiered, layered approach. But from an employee perspective, back to your question, it's really on making sure that people are being safe with their email, as well as, and this is part of that training, when you're out in a public space, not connecting to public Wi-Fi, making sure that you're using your hotspot that's granted by the city.
Well, and then also the other thing too, I don't think people think about are just files that are given to you on a jump drive, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It always makes me nervous whenever we've got systems that ask for the public to upload documents. Hopefully there's extra attention paid to those potential points of entry as well.
There is.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any further questions. Either one of my other council members do. All right. Well, Commissioner, we appreciate the work in keeping our system safe, up and running efficiently, and look forward to additional conversations.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I also want to acknowledge we've been joined by Councilmember Jason Dozier. We now constitute a quorum, so this meeting is officially called to order. I'm going to go back before we jump into the next two presentations and take care of the just basic business. The first one is the adoption of the agenda. We do have a walk-in today that is affiliated with a special procurement for enterprise asset management. So I'll make the motion to amend our agenda, seconded by Shook. Let's open the motion to amend open the vote to amend the agenda. There we go.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The agenda is amended. I'll make the motion to adopt the amended agenda, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. The amended agenda is adopted. Next item is approval of the minutes. I'll make the motion to approve them, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. All right, let's return to presentations. Next up is Open Records Compliance Act Quarterly Update. Kristen Denius, our Chief Transparency Officer, is going to wow us with her openness.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm going to throw caution to the wind and take off my mask so you can see my face. Okay. So thank you all for having me here today. It's good to see you. I am going to present the quarterly update on behalf of the Office of Transparency, also known as me. So most of what I'm going to do is just kind of run through our current status of how we handle Open Records Act requests, because I think that is really good information for the public and for all of our internal users to have. Requests for records are currently received and responded to mostly electronically. That is one of the changes that happened during the pandemic when we all kind of converted to that format. That continues to be our highest volume of traffic in receiving requests. We do occasionally receive requests via U.S. mail, but I highly encourage anyone in the public who would like to submit a request that electronically is the vastly more efficient and better way to do that. We will respond if you send us a letter, but it is much, much easier for everyone if you send us an email. There are open records officers that are designated within each City of Atlanta department, and they are the folks internally who are trained to handle Open Records Act requests, and they do so daily. There are email inboxes that have been set up for each department to help the requests get directly to the correct people, and I highly encourage the use of those email inboxes as well. I am going to be giving you the update on the status of the implementation of the Open Records Management software that I have been working with AIM and the Procurement Department to procure and implement, and we're very, very close, and I'll get back to that in a minute. There's also an Open Records and Transparency webpage that I maintain that's linked on the city's webpage that provides a lot of information about how the city complies with Open Records Act requests, also provides access to all of our policies and procedures and any training materials that are available. So I know I've done this multiple times, but I think that it's valuable to kind of walk folks through how to find that webpage, because it is a good access point for accessing my resources as well as my contact information if anyone should need it. So from the city's main website, which is the screenshot right here, you'll see that red circled I want to tab. And if you click on that, you get the blue drop down and you click on Request Open Records, and that takes you to this page with my face on it. If you scroll down, you will see a variety of links that take you to information that can be very useful. The very top button that is indicated there, it's in all caps and it says here and it's blue. That actually takes you to the alphabetized link, a link of all the alphabetized contact information for all of the designated open records officers. So for example, if you wanted to request procurement records, you need to send that request to the Department of Procurement, and there is a link. The contact information for the appropriate person can be found there. There's also these frequently asked questions that each one drops down. If you click on that little arrow, those are some of the questions that I frequently get asked, and so they're available for folks to just find on the web as well. This is what the page looks like if you click on the link for the contact information for the open records officers. So it's all alphabetized. There is a search bar at the top, so you don't have to scroll through every single page. You can just type in one word from whichever department it is that you wanted to find. If you were looking for audit, it's there, but if you were looking for ethics, you could start typing in ethics and it will populate just that one. And you can click on the link for the little email right there, and that's all you have to do to submit an email Open Records Act request. This shows the links to all the different policies and procedures that we have implemented, and I say we in the royal sense, it's just me. And if anyone ever has an idea about something that they think would be beneficial to have linked on this page, I'm absolutely happy to do that. AIM is an incredibly helpful and useful partner in getting this web page updated, so I can do that very quickly. So back to the Open Records Management software project. This is what occupies a lot of my time right now. It has been kind of a prolonged process, but I made the decision very early on that I wanted to make sure to do it properly, and because this will be a software program that is used internally but also externally by citizens, and we want to have it set up correctly and have it working correctly before we start asking people to use it, because we do not want to end up in a situation where our processes for handling open records requests slow down the receipt of records. So we just want to make sure that it's all fully functional in the way that we want it to be before we open it up. So right now, we're still handling Open Records Act requests in the traditional process, which is, I think, pretty darn good at this point. But this will make it so much better, because one of the things, to the point of the AIM update a minute ago, standardizing the process across all of our departments, leveraging our ability to use technology to make things more efficient and more effective and quicker, I think is one of the primary goals of this software. We got thrown off a little bit. I was hoping to have it fully implemented by now, Right now, it's looking more like towards the end of this calendar year because there was a new version of the software that came out. And so there were not drastic changes, and most of the changes actually were things that we wanted, that they were for us, or I don't know if they were for us, but they really kind of tracked what we would have liked to have seen in the software. And so we backed off a little bit. We're in the middle of training. We backed that off a little bit in order to get the new software implemented so that we didn't have to retrain on the same thing twice. So we're about to start up again with the training process to make sure that all of our internal folks who need to know how to use the software know how to use it before we start doing a soft launch. And hopefully with the intention of having the software go live for the public either at the very end of this calendar year or in the very beginning of the new year. One of the things that we're working on right now with the software vendor who is doing the initial training, we're working with them to create internal training materials so that I can continue the training going forward, because as you know, we do have staff changes on occasion, and so it's nice to have some materials in place that are high quality, that are created in participation with the software vendor that I can use to onboard new people and when people change staff assignments and things like that. So look out for an announcement. Hopefully it will actually be happening soon. Just as a reminder, the requirement is in the code that the software platform be implemented. This is what is contemplated by the highlighted portion, which is a portal for submitting requests for open records. And so that is in the transparency section of the city code. And I'm excited about it. I still am excited about it, even though it's taking longer than I had hoped. I continue to do open records compliance training. The new employee orientation module continues to be part of what all of our newly onboarding employees see to make them aware that they are subject to the Open Records Act, which is not something that everybody is aware of if they're coming from the private sector. I am also finalizing a self-paced online training module that similar to what was described in the AIM presentation of the annual training that we all do for the cybersecurity. So I'm hoping to have an online self-paced module for open records as well. And I continue to show up and do my dog and pony show for anyone who wants to have me to do targeted training for departments. I just was visiting with the finance department senior management earlier this week. So I am available for that if anyone would like to see a show. And with that, I will take any questions that anyone may have.
All right, questions for Ms. Denius. Mr. Shook.
Do you have any staff?
I am the staff. No, it's me. But honestly, right now, that's all I don't have actual need for any staff. Knocking on wood, I should probably knock on wood. But it's most of what I do during the day is related to the software implementation and just answering people's questions and helping people kind of noodle through the best way to get from point A to point B with providing access to records. So my thought process around this entire position is that I should make myself obsolete. I should have the training in place and the tools in place so that people don't have questions on a frequent basis. So at this point, I guess that means maybe I'm doing a good job because I'm not clobbered with more than I can handle.
But you can't blame anybody else.
Well, that's motivating, isn't it?
Well, thank you for not having 3 interim deputy commissioners.
And I will say, I do have to honestly, I mean, I am the transparency officer. I am the Office of Transparency, but I work very closely with the law department. I get a lot of help from the law department. I get a lot of help from AIM. We have fine-tuned the email retrieval protocol, which is a huge component for handling Open Records Act requests that used to bog us down both in resources and in time. And the protocols that we currently have in place are much more efficient. So all of that just sort of builds on itself and kind of is an example of the way I'm hoping to continue to layer on technology and training to help this become an easier process that doesn't require a lot of people to be watching it.
Okay, so my standard question, as always, how are requests trending, up, down, sort of the same? And then Do most of your requests come from media? And if so, what are kind of the more typical types of requests that come in?
I would say that requests, from what I can tell, and obviously I'll have a much better idea about that in extremely granular detail when we get the software program in place. But from what I can tell right now, requests are generally trending about even. That said, any little thing that jumps off in the next 5 minutes could change that. So Open Records Act requests are very current events driven and very kind of internal events driven as well. So it really does, it's hard to say, it's hard to see trends necessarily, except that there's generally a constant baseline. And the constant baseline is kind of always the same. It went down dramatically during the beginning of the pandemic, and then it picked up a lot when people kind of got used to being virtual and started not panicking anymore and started thinking about records. And so now we've sort of settled in, I would say probably about where we were before the pandemic started. The police department always gets a ton because they interact with the public a lot and they generate a lot of records that the public need. And then some departments hardly get any, and those kind of general rules of thumb haven't really changed much.
Media accounts for roughly what percentage of the request?
Media, I would say, accounts for, it's really hard to say, but I would say somewhere between 30 and 50%.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Other questions? Following along that line, I mean, I do think, I'm hoping that the analytics that you'll be able to get from the new system are good in terms of just tracking the requests, making sure that we're fulfilling them, but they also may be good signals to us in terms of areas or departments or functions that the public is starting to pay attention to, so that we are aware of those inquiries before they become crises in the news. So I'll be curious, does that have that functionality?
So I think so. It's going to be one of those things that I'm actually really excited to be able to play around with that sort of thing. There are a lot of reporting capabilities. One of the, and the way I kind of envision using that capacity of the software, at least initially, is to see, to your point, where are the larger, who's the biggest attention getter, and what are there any possible options that we can work together with that department to maybe proactively put documents available to the public so that they don't have to be requested, so that we can free up staff to do other things. So looking to see where we can achieve efficiencies just from that respect, and then also, you know, to see if there's a way to track, like you said, the focus.
And then also piggybacking on something that Councilmember Schick said, I'm less concerned about the deputy interim commissioners, just so long as you don't have seven funded vacant positions in your department of one, then we'll be doing all right.
No unfunded vacant positions.
No funded vacant positions either, right? Okay. Okay, other questions for Ms. Denius? All right, well, thank you very much, appreciate it. We'll see you next cycle, or next, whatever time period, interval, that's it. Next up is the Internal Auditor's Office Quarterly Update. Ms. Noble.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Amanda Noble, City Auditor. I'm here with our quarterly report. There you go. So this infographic summarizes our activity in fiscal year 2023 to date, about 15 weeks. We've completed 4 audits, and the audit committee has approved their release. We'll talk about them next page. We have 8 audits in progress, and I'll talk about them in another slide too. We have closed 30 recommendations with 29 implemented, so 97% of the closed recommendations were implemented. Our goals for fiscal year 23 are to release 12 audit reports and close at least 100 recommendations, so we are on track to meet those. On continuous audit, we are continuing to work with departmental investigators to clean up existing Access and Oracle ATL Cloud, fine-tune the controls to reduce false positives, and ensure that anomalous transactions are dealt with appropriately. We're monitoring 49 segregation of duties conflict pairs, access to 13 sensitive business activities, and 28 types of financial and HR transactions for risks and red flags. And this effort has provided tangible benefits for the city through identifying vulnerabilities in excess access in roles that we've ensured are corrected, and then risk mitigation efforts are documented. These are the 4 audits we've completed that the Audit Committee has approved for release. We put them in Elms this morning, so they'll be part of your legislative packet Monday. But the Beltline Special Services District Financial Review, management agreed with all 4 of our recommendations aimed at clarifying roles, strengthening procedures, and developing a reporting framework. On citywide cash handling, management agreed with 9 recommendations and partially agreed with 1, primarily to strengthen centralized oversight, improve inadequate policies and procedures, and mitigate inherent risks of accepting cash and cash equivalents. On employee benefits, management agreed with all 12 of our recommendations to improve accuracy and more effectively administer benefit programs. And on the fire department financial transaction review, management agreed with all 4 of our recommendations to develop policies and procedures and segregate incompatible duties. These are the audits in progress. I think we've already talked about Oracle Time and Labor and the in-rem. For solid waste services, we have resumed our long paused audit, and we are focusing on identifying cost-effective ways to improve service delivery. We have started an audit of the municipal market lease. Dean became aware that the Municipal Market Corporation potentially had not made lease rental payments or repaid HUD and CDBG funds according to the terms of its current lease agreement. However, under those terms, the corporation, it's possible that the market hasn't owed rent at all, but Dean requested the audit to assess the market's current financial standing. The plane train contract, the Department of Aviation requested this audit. City contracts with third party to manage the plane train is a cost plus management fee contract with performance incentives worth about $23 million a year. We'll assess controls to ensure that the vendor complies with contract requirements, and management manages the contract to do that. The Office of Contract Compliance, Resolution 22R3198 requested an analysis to compare amounts represented in original bids with the amounts actually dispersed for work completed by MBE and FBE vendors over 2018 through 2021. This audit we may need to pause because the migration from the former system PRISM to the current SDMS system seems to have been incomplete. So the historical data right now I don't think is reliable to audit. On grants management, this is a new department. Previous performance and financial audits identified heightened risk of noncompliance with grant requirements. So we're reviewing controls in place to ensure that the city spends funds on allowable goods and services in the specified time frame, whether controls are in place to ensure accurate reporting, and whether the department is complying with procedures for subrecipient monitoring. And then finally, on business licensing, system failures and staffing reductions resulted in a backlog of business license applications and renewals and longer processing times. We are assessing policies, procedures, and practices to ensure controls are in place to administer the process consistently and in accordance with city code provisions. We're also looking at staffing levels. On audit follow-up, we have made 277 audit recommendations since 2019 in 33 reports. 96 of the recommendations were closed with 75 implemented, 78%. 21 we dropped, which is when we close a recommendation as not implemented either because management disagreed or circumstances changed. 181 of the recommendations are still open. 99 of these are classified as not started, which is our default status if the business owners haven't provided an update. We are working with departments and getting those statuses filled in. 70 have been started and 12 are partly implemented. And the URL on the first slide shows where you can access the dashboard to see what all of these recommendations. This slide shows our organization chart. We are fully staffed as of tomorrow, when our last vacancy is filled. This chart reflects our reorganization that we implemented with the budget, which is intended to retain specialized technical skills and develop a clear career path to promote growth and retain staff. Despite the turnover we had last year, we've maintained a demographically diverse staff with varied backgrounds, and we have not had any turnover this year, although our executive assistant is planning to retire next month. Questions?
All right, questions for Ms. Noble. Mr. Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Just a quick question. I'm sure you've explained this to me at some point in my short months I'm being on city council, but just could use a refresher. What is the process or the typical protocol that y'all go through to determine what topics or subjects are worthy of an audit?
Well, we get requests from departments, from city council members, usually through resolutions. We go through a process with the audit committee where they review the audit universe, so basically all departments and organizations of the city with what they do, what type of risks are involved, and the last time we audited. So we completed that process last week, and our audit plan, well, for the second half of the year, because they already approved the ones that had been requested, is in Elms right now, so you'll see it Monday.
Thank you. I yield.
All right, Mr. Shook.
Okay, thank you. Well, your work is critical and highly appreciated. I think something that would help council and the various committees, if you could do it, would be to take your audit recommendation follow-up slide and then distribute to the relevant committees just a reminder about where the departments stand, because as I've said before, you guys churn these out and, we're looking at hundreds of pieces of legislation, and it's a lot like the old I Love Lucy sketch, with the cake's coming off the conveyor belt, and it's easy to sort of get lost, but your recommendations are really important. And so it'd be great if you could refresh us by, on a committee basis, sort of distributing snapshots so that we can follow up.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you so much.
Other questions, comments? I was going to say the same thing. We got to figure out a better way for us to track them with you. Not just the one. I mean, I know that when y'all go through, there's some that are probably more critical than others in terms of closing the gap or moving the needle, and just being able to help us figure out a way to focus in on those and hold the departments accountable for implementation. But we can work with you and figure something out. Other questions for Ms. Noble and her team? Again, thank you for the great work. I know that this has been a real luxury to have for council members in terms of our ability to just do the analysis on the work and the operations here at the city, so thank you. All right. Other comments or questions on presentations from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, that'll take us to the next section of the agenda, which is communications. First item up is 22-C 5164. This is a communication from Mayor Andre Dickens appointing Ms. Tarlisha Smith to serve as Commissioner of Human Resources for the City of Atlanta. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wan
Good afternoon.
and members of the Finance Executive Committee. I am Jason Ingram, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Mrs. Tarlisha W. Smith, Esquire, who has recently accepted the appointment of Commissioner of Human Resources for the City of Atlanta. She is joined today by her husband, Mr. Mark Smith, behind me, and her daughter, Taylor, and their closest friends and family have also come all the way from Florida to be with us today. So I want to make sure I get this right. A proven, thoughtful HR executive and attorney by trade, Mrs. Smith has been identified and appointed to lead the mayor's priorities of attracting and retaining top talent. Most recently, she served as the Assistant City Manager and HR Director for the City of Fort Lauderdale. She holds an undergraduate degree from Grambling State University and a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Miami. This one was a bit difficult because typically I come up with prepared statements, but I can tell you I've spent time with Commissioner Smith over the last couple weeks. She is truly a thoughtful, professional executive. She has gravitas around HR. I'm excited about working with her. She understands HR not just from an administrative standpoint, but as a business professional. And I think that you all are going to enjoy some of the things and updates that you'll hear over the next several months coming from our HR department. So excited to have her. And again, it is a great privilege to introduce Mrs. Tarlisha Smith, Esquire, as the City of Atlanta's most recently appointed HR Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wan, and Financial Executive Committee. Before I get in trouble, I have one more daughter who my boss didn't meet. Bridget is here as well, so I just wanted to clear that up before I hear about it later. So,
I was going to say, typically, we just have you kind of tell a little bit more about yourself, your vision, and then if colleagues have questions, we will present them to you.
okay,
She's
great.
got a big vision, so brace yourself.
Yes, my vision is in lockstep with that of the administration and this council. I was asked to come here and work to supercharge along in lockstep with the mayor, the city's priorities. And right now, I understand that is the workforce, getting the workforce moving forward, as well as making sure that we move forward with the classification and compensation study. With that, I've heard at least 5 or 6 times today staffing issues. I understand that it is a priority, and so much so that I have, within my first week, worked with finance and budget to make sure that we do a position control audit to establish exactly where all of our personnel are, and to make sure that we scrub our positions that have been on the books for a while. With that, we're preparing to go into the classification and compensation study, and we want to make sure that we have, I guess for lack of better terms, clean books and identified positions so that we can steer that project moving forward. It is going to possibly have impact, and we need to be able to manage not only the narrative around it, but actually the execution of that study to make sure that we do it in an efficient way, because I have been through those processes before, and it can get very expensive, time-consuming. It can take a long time. So we need to be in charge of that process. But beyond that, it's my goal to make sure that I work towards a culture of inclusion for all levels of the organization. As I've been telling Mr. Pace in meeting with you all, that it is very important that the person who tosses the trash up to those who work in the mayor's office get the very same treatment. It's important that everyone has a comfortable and safe working environment. It's very important that people, being the employees in the city as well as the administrators, have an opportunity to vent and express themselves about how they're being treated in the city, what their work environment is like, making sure that everyone understands their duties and responsibilities and comes to work and just do that. We exchange hours for dollars, and that's all we ask. If we make friends along the way or we do anything beyond that, that's great. But the city pays us to work, and that's all we ask that the employees do. In addition to that, my evaluation that's taking place right now beyond the position control audit is also of the systems. We need centralized systems for HR. Coming into the organization, I see about 26 HR departments. And I say that because I haven't had the opportunity to meet with all of those who are in charge of HR delivery services throughout the city. This is an organization that has upwards of 8,400 employees that are currently budgeted and filled, but there are additional possibly 1,000 positions. I believe we're budgeted for or have classifications for 10,000 employees. We need to staff up and make sure we're coming out of the pandemic, and it's going to be uncomfortable for many people. And operationally, I just heard the CIO say that it works for some departments and it may not work for others, but based on our operational assessment and optimal efficiency for the city, we need to make sure that those who need to come back to work get back to work. And those are going to be individual assessments and conversations that we have with the department heads. And we can have that conversation after we get through the second phase of our position control audit, because we can tell the department directors exactly what they have, where they have it, and where the positions are that need to be scrubbed or don't need to be scrubbed. And when I say scrubbed, there are positions that may be obsolete based on the classification and compensation study and the conversations based on the operational needs of the department heads. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to working on. I have tasked my staff to the hilt in the last 2 weeks. So I told them over the next few months, a few people are going to be calling me out of my name, but we'll fall in love again in the next few months after that. But it's going to be uncomfortable because we need to stretch. You know, coming out of the pandemic, it's a whole new world. The workforce is very challenging right now. Talent is, very hard to find, but we still want to try to maintain and attract the top talent, for the city. It's a world-class city, international city, and we need to make sure that we have the best people in the best seats working for us and staying in contact with the workforce. Most importantly for me, I keep my Fridays wide open on purpose because my goal is to walk the plank. And when I say walk the plank, it means that I need to get out on the beat and start meeting the personnel. Not those of you who I get to see every day in City Hall, but those of us who are, the employees or the portion of the workforce that's forward-facing outside in the trenches who are on the ground. It's very important that we hear that voice, and I bring that voice back to you with whatever recommendations or concerns that they have, and making sure that we have full compliance with whatever the employees' needs are, as well as the administration needs, and balancing that with the council. So that's kind of where I'm going with everything now. I see a lot of smiling faces, which means a lot of questions are coming. I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, we got the whole slate up here, so we're going to start with
I know. I'm ready.
Councilmember Waits. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner,
Yes.
wanted to just thank you for taking the time to meet. I think it was last week. You set some lofty and progressive goals, to which I find your vision refreshing, and I look forward to working with you. It's my belief that there's nothing more important than ensuring that the city employees have all the resources that they need to thrive and serve our citizens in Atlanta, and so I welcome your presence, and I'm excited to work with you.
Thank you, Councilmember Waits.
Thank you, Councilmember Waits. Mr. Shook.
Yeah, welcome to you and your family and friends.
Thank you.
As you've already learned, you picked a really rotten time to find an affordable house here. But you'll have to figure that out. And I hope all of us have had the opportunity to sit down with her, as I have, and I've shared my traditionally overripe opinions with her, and she didn't bat an eyelash. So I found that very refreshing.
It is.
I'm particularly thrilled to know that one of the first things she's going to do is include what in the old days we used to call a command and control study. And you might remember all the friction that obtained around that a couple of administrations ago, which we should have done it then. We didn't. The second best time to do it is now. And so somewhere former Chair Adrian is ecstatic over that. So I look forward to help get you to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bakhtiari.
I can see it now, the headline, Howard Shook, District 7 rep, says affordable housing in Atlanta is rotten. Wherever Fox 5 is, they're excited. So you've excited Howard, so that in itself is a feat. And it's before 5 p.m., so well done. I loved getting to meet you the other day in the office, and I wanted to take a minute to commend you on what we discussed around compression pay issues.
Yes.
Obviously, what I'm looking forward to learning from you is basically how to better understand what's happening in our departments and how we can assist with, like how the council can assist with compression rather than just rather than taking out our commissioners, because I honestly think that we have. I mean, I'm spoiled because I just got here, but I think that we have some of the best commissioners ever. And what I'm looking forward to learning is how we can assist, how we can do better with hiring. If you haven't talked to some of my colleagues, and that's some of their biggest concerns. Whistleblower protections, I think one of the things I love most about you is that you know how to talk to the employees. mean, you know how to talk to me. I'm not a lawyer, and so I can't understand half the things that happen up here. But I really appreciate the fact that you're able to break down information and that you will understand how to talk to our employees, because I think that the disconnects with a lot of our departments and understanding what's happening is actually what contributes to a lot of our attrition rates.
Yes.
And you know that I'm going to be talking to you about creating new departments. And what I'm really excited to explore is city employee, speaking of affordable housing, is exploring city employee housing and how we can better provide, how we can start a program for housing for city employees so that our watershed and DPW employees aren't having to drive an hour in to work here. So I'm excited to explore all of that with you, and couldn't be more excited to get you started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Right, and as I recognize Jason Dozier, I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond. So, Mr. Dozier, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Smith. I will echo something that Councilmember Shook said about, you didn't bat an eye, the same request about employee housing. I know we had that same conversation, and so, in the Army, we have a phrase, good idea fairy, and they're not always the best ideas, but there's things that are floating around that sometimes we have to dig our heels into and dig into and learn a little bit more about how we can address the issue. And so I feel confident that you are going to roll up your sleeves and do the work at the end of the day. And regardless of what we throw at you, I know you're up to the challenge. We will throw a lot at you. I know you and I talked a lot about veteran recruitment and retention here at the City of Atlanta. And so
Yes.
I'm just excited to work with you in the coming years to make our city the best city to work for.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I was just reminded, in a way that only she can remind me, that I did not acknowledge that Councilmember Bakhtiari joined us earlier as well.
You're so shady.
Yeah, I have to join in the chorus of accolades. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I think what you're hearing from all of us is an acknowledgement that at the end of the day, the biggest investment that we make from our budget every year is in our employees. And we have to make sure that that investment is both sound, but also that we're getting the best return and output from that we possibly can. And the way that we do that is we create an environment where our employees want to come to work. They come inspired and motivated and ready to do the best job that they can. We aren't always going to be able to compete on compensation. You and I talked a lot about this. So what the other things that we have to offer in terms of benefits or culture, or just simply the fact that we are a big city and everybody here is trying to row in the same direction to move the city forward. I have a lot of confidence in what you and I talked about, and your plans, your vision, your thoughts, your philosophy, that you're the right person to be at the helm of that ship, making sure that we've got all the right folks on the team in the right positions. Each one of us has got the right oar that fits what we are supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be rowing. So I'm going to, yeah, I'm good at that today, right? Caffeine has kicked in. So with that, I have a feeling we're all going to want to be the one to make the motion to accept this communication, but I see that in her typical way, Councilmember Bakhtiari has jumped in and taken that, and Councilmember Waits has the honor of the second. So if there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The communication is accepted. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, and again, thank you to your family and friends that have been with you today. I hope that y'all are as proud and of her as we are excited for her being with us. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Item H, ordinances for first reading. We have 5 items to sound. Ms. Linda, if you will do that, please, we will accept those in.
Yes, Mr. Chair, item number 2 is 20-1793. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute all documents necessary for the acquisition of certain property necessary for the construction of green stormwater infrastructure and stream and floodplain restoration as part of the Proctor Creek Watershed Watershed Project funded by the Series 2018D Water and Wastewater Bond, authorizing the mayor or his designee or the chief procurement officer or his designee on behalf of the city of Atlanta to execute all documents necessary to acquire the property, authorizing the mayor and the city attorney in the event negotiations are unsuccessful to institute condemnation proceedings pursuant to the section of the code listed herein, and authorizing acquisition, due diligence, closing costs to be paid from the fund department organization and accounts listed herein, and waiving certain provisions of Article 10 of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Code of Ordinances and for other purposes. Item number 3 is 22-0-1794. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor as designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute all documents necessary for the acquisition of certain property interests necessary for the Westlake Avenue Bridge Replacement Project, authorizing negotiations with property owners for the acquisition of such property interests, authorizing title searches, appraisals, surveys, and any other items necessary for the acquisition of such property interest, and authorizing the mayor and the city attorney in the event negotiations are unsuccessful to institute condemnation proceedings pursuant to Georgia section code listed herein, and waiving certain subsections of section 2-1541 and 2-1545 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation, all contracted work and payments for property interest to be paid from account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Item number 4 is 22-0-1795. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2023 budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations bond proceeds in the aggregate principal amount of $406 million in connection with City of Atlanta General Obligation Public Improvement Bonds, Series 22A, and bond proceeds in the aggregate principal amount of $4 million. It says $4 million and 0 cents in connection with the City of Atlanta Various Purpose General Obligation Bonds, Series 22B. Item number 5 is 22-0-1796. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the establishment of the Department of Parks and Recreation and an employee incentive program, authorizing the incorporation of a professional certification program into the new program and for other purposes. Item number 6 is 22-0-1797. This is an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to transfer in an amount not to exceed $1,482,781.80 within the E911 R&E Fund to the E911 Critical Equipment Upgrade Project for the purpose of upgrading critical equipment and systems and for other purposes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lindo. Now that those are read in, there's no action to take. They will be before us next cycle. Takes us now to regular agenda, ordinances for second read. The first one is item 7. Colleagues, there is a substitute for this that changes the caption. I'll read that in. It's in 22-0-1699, an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Wan is substituted by Finance Executive Committee authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed $9,700.00 to the Atlanta Public Schools to support its efforts to raise $15 million in celebration of the 150th anniversary of the district and for other purposes. I'll make the motion to bring forward the substitute, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The substitute is before us. Colleagues, we are still awaiting dollar amounts and participation from 2 of our other colleagues, so there will be yet another substitute between now and Monday. So I'm going to make the motion to approve this on condition of that substitute on Monday that adds those in, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Bakhtiari. Any discussion on that motion or the paper? Seeing none, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The item will be moved forward favorably on condition. All right, next item is 22-0-1756. And colleagues, since Mr. Davis is going to come up to speak to this one, there's several others in the agenda that he'll be speaking to. I'm going to do all of those sequentially, just so that while we've got him up at the podium. First item is 22-0-1756. It's an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing and adopting a memorandum of understanding for the lease of certain property having an address of 72 Marietta Street, Atlanta, Georgia, by the Department of Watershed Management, authorizing all expenditures to be paid from fund numbers listed and for other purposes. All right, Mr. Davis.
Good afternoon, Chairman Warren and other members of the committee. The purpose of this legislation is to authorize, as it says, a new memorandum of understanding, a lease agreement with Department of Watershed Management. The original lease expired, and that previous one was just based upon partial rental throughout the facility. The purpose of this amendment here, this new agreement, is for them to actually lease the whole facility. So we started the negotiation process back in January and went through a series of processes and with the terms of the lease. And so we ended up initially starting out with a 10-year lease form. Department of Watershed did not want that, so we ended up agreeing to a different term. In the process of doing that, we actually ended up doing a couple of appraisals to make sure that we got the right pricing structure for a facility of this type. So what we ended up with is a 2-year term with 3 one-year renewals, and with the square foot cost of $15.75 per square foot. Department of Watershed would be responsible for maintaining the entire facility, maintaining the equipment, et cetera. The city would just be responsible for the infrastructure and the structural portion of the facility.
All right, questions or comments from my colleagues? Mr. Shook.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the difference between the 10-year preference and the 2-year preference.
That was the decision by Watershed Management. I think they were looking in the process of trying to build a new facility directly themselves, so they didn't want to enter in something for that period of time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, motion from Shook to approve, seconded by Dozier. Any further discussion? Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
All right, 6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. All right, let's now go to the next one you've got. That's number 21, 22-R4425. There is a substitute for this that changes the caption. I'll read in the new caption and then make the motion. It's a resolution by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing the mayor or his designee to issue task order number listed for contract number listed, job order contracting services small, with HCR Construction, Inc., for City Council Communications, Suite 2330 renovations, option B, on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management, in an amount not to exceed $14,402.22. All work to be charged to and paid from accounts listed and for other purposes. I move to bring the substitute forward. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The substitute is before us. Mr. Davis.
Yes, good afternoon again. The purpose of this legislation is actually to enter into an agreement with the job program, HCR, to do some of the renovation work as relates for the City Council. Just to go in and to tear out some additional walls and create a new wall for the new space that's going into play.
Questions for Mr. Davis? Motion from Shook to approve on substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. That item is approved on substitute. Next item will be number 26, 22-R4510, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into amendment number 4 to add Municipal Court of Atlanta as an authorized user to the agreement and to execute renewal number 2 for FC 10373 Locks, Hardware, and Locksmith Services with DH Pace Company, Inc., on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management, the Department of Watershed Management, and the Municipal Court of Atlanta for a term of 1 year effective from November 15, 2022 through November 14, 2023 in an amount not to exceed $306,072.41. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Mr. Davis.
Again, good afternoon. The purpose of the legislation, execute amendment number 4, renewal number 2, effective November 15, 2022 through November 14, 2023. Amount not to exceed $316,000 for Locks, Hardware, Locksmith Services on behalf of Dean watershed management. Amendment is also adding funding for the department listed services to be included upon to this contract as well.
All right, questions for Mr. Davis? All right, motion from Shook to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Bakhtiari. If there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved. Next item is 27. There is a substitute for this that changes the caption. If I can find it. 4511. Oh, right here. It is 22-R4511, a substitute resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the temporary re-engagement of City of Atlanta retiree John Lavelle as a real estate consultant for the Department of Enterprise Asset Management, and to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute a professional services agreement retroactively effective October 15, 2022, for a period not to exceed 520 days in an amount not to exceed $36,000.00 pursuant to Section 3-505A of the Charter of the City of Atlanta and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward. Need a second. Second from Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Mr. Davis.
Yes, again, good afternoon. The purpose of this legislation is actually to do a temporary refill upon the Director for Real Estate Services. Just recently, we had the interim director to resign, and due through some additional services and a lot of different activities taking place over the next several months, we wanted to bring John back, who was most familiar with the operation, so that we can handle the businesses that we needed to deal with.
All right, questions. Mr. Shook.
Well, I'm sorry the other person left, but Lavelle's a great get. He provided very valuable service to the city for a really long time. Is it anticipated that within the time frame here, there will be a successful search concluded?
So that is the goal. We've been working with HR to make sure that we get the documentation process ready to go, and we're waiting for that advertisement to hit. We wanted to do this while John was here as well, so that we can utilize that experience to be able to select a candidate that would be able to fill the needs that we need to have.
Well, and speak of the devil.
I was going to say.
Come on up.
Good afternoon, John Lavelle.
How'd they drag you back into this?
It's interesting being back after 2 years away. And some things change and some things never do. So, but I'm glad to be here to help as a bridge for the reestablishment of the division.
So you're out of retirement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Glad to have you back.
Just till the end of the year.
Well, we'll see about that.
Thank you.
All right, other questions for the department or Mr. Lavelle? I'll make the motion to approve on substitute, seconded by Shook. It is good to see you again. Everything old is new again, as evidenced by me, too. I said it's good to see you. Everything old is new again, as evidenced by my sitting here as well. So. All right, I made the motion, seconded by Shook. Let's open that vote.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved. Thank you, Mr. Lavelle. All right, the next item, while we have them up here, is item 30. There is a substitute for this that changes the caption. It is item 22-R4514. Oh, wow, it's a long caption. Substitute resolution by Finance Executive Committee to amend cooperative purchasing arrangement number listed on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Assets Management to add the Atlanta Citizen Review Board and the Atlanta City Council as authorized users to purchase office furniture from the state authorized manufacturers listed herein in accordance with Section 2-1606 of Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, utilizing State of Georgia statewide contract number listed, and to add additional funding in an amount not to exceed $657,808.12. All contracted work shall be charged to and paid from funding accounts listed herein and for other purposes. I'll move to bring forward the substitute, seconded by Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Votes closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. Mr. Davis.
Good afternoon again. So the purpose of this legislation here, we have several restacking projects that's going on now in City Hall where we're doing renovations for 3 different departments. And so as part of this package here is to amend the contract so that we can purchase the furniture that's associated with the build out for the different projects that we have.
All right, there are questions for Mr. Davis. Seeing none, there's a motion from Shook to approve on substitute. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on substitute. And I believe this is your final one, item number 31, 22-R4515, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute amendment number 6 to FC 10658, cooperative purchasing agreement for HVAC services with Train US, Inc., to add additional funding for HVAC repairs at various facilities on behalf of Departments of Enterprise Asset Management, Atlanta Department of Transportation, Aviation, Parks and Recreation, Atlanta Police, Public Works, and Watershed Management in an amount not to exceed $1,010,000.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Mr. Davis.
Good afternoon again. Purpose of this legislation for amendment number 6 to add funding on behalf of the departments that is listed here in an amount not to exceed $1,010,000 for HVAC repairs. Purpose for each department, as we've talked about this before, this is an existing contract, and the term is right now is for it to be able to add different services, to be able to carry out different HVAC components that's related to the different departments and their needs. And working with DOP, we are looking at being able to revise the new contracts that we prepared to write in the very near future. And without some of these programs that take place, we do work with them as well to kind of go out and do a market analysis to see how the prices are comparing. So we can kind of make sure that we are kind of keeping alignment with the different costs that we are facing.
All right, questions for Mr. Davis. Mr. Shook, go ahead.
So this is not the first example of this we've seen today, or in fact, quite often. And every now and then, the angst of myself and others gets built up by, contracts that start off at $215K and now stand potentially at 1.1. I think that.
No, we've already added another $1 million on top of that over time.
Well, so if I could just briefly, and the HVAC work has to get done, and I'm going to support getting it done, and I thank the procurement officer for being here, and I wonder if you could come up and just share you've seen a lot of this. I wonder if it raises your eyebrows, or if, having looked into it, you're comfortable that this is the best way to go, or if in the future we need to look at some other options.
Sudeep Majumdar, Chief Procurement Officer for City of Atlanta. I have been noticing this for quite some time now. So we are going to work with different departments to put some control measures in place. One of the things that we are doing with this particular one is we're going to go out in the market to see the deal that we're getting is the best deal in the marketplace. We're also going to evaluate options of taking this out to the marketplace and getting a competitive bid from all the suppliers that are in this space. So, Councilmember Mr. Shook, the question that you raised about, am I seeing this over and over again? The answer is yes. Are we doing something to address that? The answer is yes. Will we have something in place very soon? The answer is yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, and I don't mean to pick on Deem, but because this is a kind of an endemic concern that cycles in and out. But thank you.
Other questions for the CPO or the department? If not, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Davis, that takes care of all yours, right?
Thank you.
All right. Cut you loose. Let's go back to the sequence in the agenda. The next item will be number 9, 22-01757, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to transfer residual funds from various bond fund accounts to the Series 2019A Various Purpose General Obligation Bond Fund, Fund 3154, to amend the fiscal year 2023 budget in the aggregate principal amount of $772,972.95 and for other purposes. CFO Ball, I believe you're speaking to this.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Councilmember, thank you. This ordinance aim is to reuse and reestablish residual funds for projects that have been completed or that the bonds are no longer outstanding. And we vetted this through our Treasury team as well as the Department of Law. All of these outstanding accounts are in funds that are no longer in use. So our aim is to repurpose them and use them in their intended purposes, which is capital projects. They will be going to the general obligation pool to use by Deem for facility improvements.
All right, questions for CFO Ball, Mr. Shook.
All right, well, paranoia being a learned response, I do need to see what project, the account numbers don't tell me anything. I need to see something descriptive in terms of where the money's coming from and where it's going. And
Yeah.
I did not see that in any attachments.
Absolutely. We'll send that information to you. We have the detailed drill down of the bond funds that are closed and when they were closed.
Okay, well, I'll see how the discussion goes.
Other questions? So that I understand, based to kind of further the request here, I understand kind of looking at this, that where the funds are coming from, and it's looking like they're just getting pulled back into the bond, kind of the non-committed, but you're saying that there are already projects identified, renovation projects that are going to be the expenditures, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that we will get to a chance to look at those. Y'all can provide those before Monday, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. That would be helpful. Any other questions? So, I'll make the motion to approve on condition of receiving that information.
Yep.
Monday. Second. Seconded by Shook. If there's no further discussion on that motion, let's go ahead and open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved on condition. All right, colleagues, without objection, I'm going to take items 10, 11, and 12 together as they are just council member donation papers. 22-01761, an ordinance by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed $1,000.00 from the Post 2 at-large carry-forward account to the Reynoldstown Neighbor in Need program and for other purposes. 22-01762, an ordinance by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed $10,000.00 from the Post 2 at-large carry-forward account to the Atlanta Out of the Darkness Community Walk and for other purposes. And 22-01763, an ordinance by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed $10,000.00 from the Post 2 at-large carry-forward account to the Candler Park Neighborhood Organization and for other purposes. Any questions or discussions on those? Move approval on all three by Shook, seconded by Bakhtiari. Let's open the vote, please.
Vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. These three items are approved. Next item, number 13, 22-01764, ordinance by Councilmember Liliana Bakhtiari to extend the closing date under the purchase and sale agreement between Heritage Capital Partners, LLC, and the City of Atlanta for certain property located in Land Lot 176, District 5, Atlanta, DeKalb County, Georgia, commonly known as 770 Shadow Ridge Drive, Atlanta, DeKalb County Tax Parcel ID number listed 30316 through March 30th, 2023, in accordance with Section 2-1541 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances and for other purposes. Mr. Voss, I see you in the audience. I believe you were going to speak to this paper.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Juan and members of council. I think the caption pretty much sets it up, but we have been here before asking for an extension. This is 3.19 acres located in District 5, Councilmember Bakhtiari's district. There are some conditions that were set in the sale agreement that have not been met yet. The Parks Department is thoroughly behind buying this property, but it requires those conditions to be met. We anticipate it being closed by the end of the year, but we're asking for an extension through March 31st just to ensure.
All right, questions or comments from Mr. Doug or the author? Ms. Bakhtiari?
Move to approve.
All right, there's a motion from Ms. Bakhtiari to approve. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Dozier. If there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open.
Thank you, Mr. Boss.
The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. All right, next two items. We do have substitutes for that change the caption. There. Okay. If there's no objection, I'm going to take these together. Like I said, if there's no objection. 22-01766, an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Wan as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, Series 2022B, Supplemental Pricing Ordinance, a substitute ordinance supplementing that certain ordinance, 22-01561, adopted by the Atlanta City Council on August 1st, 2022, and approved by the mayor on August 2nd, 2022, to, among other things, provide for, 1, the sale of blank City of Atlanta various purpose general obligation bonds, Series 2022B, the bonds, 2, the naming of a bond registrar and paying agent for said bonds, 3, the adoption of a form to which said bond shall adhere, 4, the preparation of a tax digest and the levy of a tax sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on said bonds, 5, the execution, delivery, and performance of said bonds, 6, the creation and maintenance of a construction fund, 7, the authorization and approval of the execution, delivery, and performance of a bond purchase agreement, 8, the ratification of the distribution of a preliminary official statement, 9, the approval, use, distribution, and execution of an official statement, 10, the authorization and approval of the execution, delivery, and performance of a continuing disclosure agreement, and 11, for other related purposes. And then 22-01767, an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Wan, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, substitute sale ordinance providing for, 1, the issuance and sale by the City of Atlanta of its general obligation public improvement bonds, Series 2022A, together known as the Series 2022A bonds, consisting of 2 subseries designated as A, City of Atlanta General Obligation Public Improvement Bond, Series 2022A-1, social bonds, and B, City of Atlanta General Obligation Public Improvement Bond, Series 2022A2, 2, the redemption of the Series 2022A bonds prior to maturity upon certain terms and conditions, 3, the addition of an extraordinary optional redemption provision, 4, the execution, delivery, and performance of said Series 2022A bonds, 5, the adoption of the form of said Series 2022A bonds, 6, the levy of a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax without limit to pay the Series 2022A bonds and the interest thereon when due and payable, 7, the creation and maintenance of a project fund, 8, designating a bond registrar, paying agent, and funds depository, 9, the authorization and approval of the execution, delivery, and performance of a bond purchase agreement, 10, the ratification of the distribution of a preliminary official statement, 11, the approval, use, distribution, and execution of an official statement, 12, the authorization and approval of the execution, delivery, and performance of a continuing disclosure agreement, and 13, for other related purposes. I'll make the motion to bring forward the substitute on both, seconded by Shook. Let's open the vote on that motion, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The 2 substitutes are now before us. CFO Bala, Mr. Knight, I see him.
Yeah, Treasurer Knight will handle these ordinances.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wan, members of the committee. These two matters.
If you'll identify yourself.
I'm sorry, Courtney Knight, City Treasurer. These two matters relate to the upcoming general obligation bond sales that we are scheduling for a couple of weeks from now. The first item, 22-0-1766, relates to what we colloquially call our baby bonds. It's a $4 million bond issue that the City of Atlanta is constitutionally authorized to issue each year for various general purposes of the city. Does not require a referendum. 1767 are the referendum bonds that were overwhelmingly approved by the voters on May 24th. in the amount of not to exceed $406 million. Those are the bonds that are issued to fund the Moving Atlanta Forward infrastructure program. There's various details of the bond issue that I'd like to bring to your attention. This will be the first issuance of what we call social bonds. The 22A bonds will receive a designation consistent with the social bond principles under the International Capital Markets Association and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This sector of ESG bonds is the fastest growing sector in the capital markets. Large institutional investors are looking to place their dollars not just for an economic return, but they're increasingly looking to do some good. So when we began our due diligence and began to look at the projects that had been identified by Parks and Rec, DEEM, the Office of Cultural Affairs, and ATL-DOT, we quickly realized that the methodology each of the operating departments had used to identify the projects that they brought forward to the council were consistent with those social bond principles. They are serving our communities. And so we began the process of seeking a third-party designation of these as social bonds. So with that label, they will immediately attract those investors who are interested in putting their money to good use. So that's one element. That's the 22A socially designated bonds. Some of the projects, largely those related to police facilities, do not fit within the categorization of social bonds. So we'll have a Series 2022B, approximately $40 million, which will not receive that stamp of approval as social bonds. That's why we've broken it up into two series. So you've got the baby bonds, the $4 million. You've got the 406 broken down between social bonds and non-social bonds. And there will be what we hope to be a very successful bond sale on October 25th.
All right, questions for Mr. CFO? Okay, questions? I have a couple of them. I think you mentioned this new instrument, social bonds. Does that result in a more favorable interest rate, or just increases the subscriber pool? Or is it just one of those things, it's a new category, but there's not really any difference?
So it's an interesting question. If you asked participants in the capital markets, like our investment bankers and our financial advisors, whether we'll get a better pricing, i.e. a lower interest rate on the bonds, no one will guarantee you that you can get that. There's ongoing studies about whether you're actually able to get improved pricing, but nobody will including myself, will step up and say, you're going to get an 0.5 better on the social bonds. What we do know is sort of a secondary effect, which is we're going to see increased demand for those social bonds because of the attraction to those ESG investors. And by that increased demand, we may be able to price the bonds a little bit better, but I can't stand up today and tell you we're going to get 3 basis points better. The interesting thing, Chairman Wan, will be that we have the 22 Bs that are not designated, and we'll have the 22As that are social bonds sold at the same time. So we'll be able to come back on the 26th when we come before you with the pricing ordinance and tell you whether we've actually achieved any pricing advantage.
Thank you. And then the other question I had is, as I was reading the caption, I noticed the addition of an extraordinary optional redemption provision.
Yes, so you may be familiar with this from the general obligation refunding that was sold in December of 2021, it was before I got here, but it was right in the thick of the Buckhead de-annexation conversation. That bond issue in December of 2021 had a similar extraordinary redemption provision that basically allows us, should that de-annexation ever be successful, to call in some of the bonds and pay the investors 103% of their purchase price so that that debt is not outstanding attributable to Buckhead.
And I may add that that will require further council action. It's not an automatic trigger. It will have to come back to city council, and it's not designated to a specific part of town, but to any de-annexation threat in the city of Atlanta. Those are questions that were brought up by rating agencies. That risk is a credit risk for the city of Atlanta. The proposed any de-annexation, people want to get a little bit more comfort around it. So in 21, we found that mechanism of saying that the city can have optionality in the future if it needed it. It could, but hopefully we will never get to that.
I see Mr. Shook has his microphone on. Do you have a question, comment?
So that's the poison pill, and it's in both of these?
Yes.
Okay. Here's my comment. It's a mistake. It sends exactly the wrong message to people that we need to be trying to make nice to instead of stepping on their neck. Does anyone have any questions about that? I understand it can be argued that it's good for the city and it's good for the bean counters, but it's another message that you are merely tolerated, that you are a burden on the rest of the city. And I will have a lot more to say about this on Monday, given the feeling that I'm going to be the only no vote here.
All right, other questions or comments for either Mr. Knight or the CFO? Okay, so we've got the two substitutes before us. I'm going to make the motion to approve both of them. Is there a second? Seconded by Dozier. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and open the vote on this, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas.
5 yeas, 1 nay. The motion carries. These two items are approved on substitute. All right, next up is, number 16. There is a substitute for this as well, 22-01768, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee to waive Chapter 2, Article 10 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, the Procurement and Real Estate Code, to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute an agreement with Fuse Corp., also known as Fuse, for the term of 1 year effective October 24, 2022, ending October 23, 2023, in an amount not to exceed $80,000.00 for the placement of a sustainability fellow and an executive fellow who will assist the mayor's Office of Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion, divisions of sustainability and resilience, and of LGBTQ affairs for 12-month fellowships. All contracted services to be charged and paid from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes. I'll make the motion to bring forward the substitute, seconded by Councilmember Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. No, Mr. Seidel, you're not off the hook yet. With the substitutes, Mr. Seidel, not off the hook yet. Yeah, we just brought the substitute for us. If you will kindly tell us about the paper. Introduce yourself and then tell us about the paper.
Thank you, Councilmember Juan. John R. Seidel, Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer for the Mayor's Office. The two different positions, one LGBTQ, other the Sustainability Fellow. Our Sustainability Fellow is going to be focused on, one, the Clean Energy Advisory Board being the liaison to help advise our progress towards our clean energy goals. Two, to help lead in the comprehensive climate and clean energy plan update. And three, lead an energy and equity energy efficiency project. The background of this is Fuse and the city's long partnership with Fuse has primarily been outside funded. For the LGBTQ position specifically, and for last year, it was completely funded by philanthropic sources. Here, for the $80,000, the Fuse is also providing the majority of funding for these positions outside of the $80,000 to not just leverage or match, but to actually go beyond those $80,000. It's going to be a huge help for our capacity for our office and our climate and sustainability work, and continue our partnership with somebody who is going to have a lot of great experience, and that's what's unique about this program.
All right, questions for Mr. Seidel. Mr. Dozier.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Seidel. Just quick question. I know these are 12-month periods. Is there an opportunity for these individuals at the end of their fellowship to continue their services with the City of Atlanta, whether it's through a full-time position or an extension of the fellowship? Can you talk through that a little bit?
For sure. So from hearing from other Fuse positions in other cities, those positions have sometimes even created full-time city positions for themselves based on the work that they've done. I think there's a gamut of different options, whether that's, obviously at the end of the contract. Looking at an extension, I can't speak to what's beyond what's listed here in 2023, but there are options that can hopefully help make a more permanent position. But for right now, we're meeting the short-term capacity and needs, and I appreciate your question.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Real quick, thank you, Mr. Seidel. How many people are in the sustainability office as of right now?
As of right now, we have Chief Sustainability Officer that's been on for just more than a week, Clean Energy Programs Associate, myself, Urban Agriculture Director, and Waste Diversion Director. So that would be 5 in total, but we also have partnerships with different departments, including Department of City Planning and our Urban Agriculture and Food Systems team, which indirectly helps add capacity for our office through deep partnerships. But to answer your question, 5. And then this fellow would be, 1 year, not permanent, but 1 year that helps meet that capacity need.
And does this include the Clean Energy Director, or is that a current opening?
That does not include the Clean Energy Director.
Okay. I'm obviously all for expanding sustainability offices, so I hope that they'll, to echo Councilmember Dozier, I hope that they would stay on after, so.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Approval.
Second.
All right, motion from Dozier to approve on substitute, seconded by Bakhtiari. There's no further discussion. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. Thank you, Mr. Seidel. All right, the next item, 22-01769, an ordinance by council members Norwood, Lewis, Overstreet, Bakhtiari, Faroki, Boone, and Juan, authorizing the chief financial officer to create account numbers within the Oracle financial system for each council district in order to transfer their district discretionary local funds as authorized in the May 4, 2022 referendum upon their immediate availability and for other purposes. Colleagues, it's my understanding that the form of this paper is currently incorrect. It should be a resolution. I'll make the motion to file. As I understand, there will be a resolution introduced on the 17th. But before we do that, I did want to ask the CFO. I think I had a conversation with Deputy CFO Wilson that during the authorization, anticipation, and appropriations process, those accounts get set up automatically anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, they do get set up automatically. Council district discretionary spending on the bond funds is placed into the project categories to be tracked independently for each council district.
So this is somewhat redundant, but there's no pushback or objection?
No, there is not.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to file, again, with the understanding that we're going to have a resolution come through. Seconded by Dozier. There's no further discussion. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item will be filed. Next item, 22-01772, ordinance by Councilmember Jason Winston to declare as surplus certain real property located at Avondale Avenue Southeast and Lester Avenue Southeast, Atlanta, Georgia, having tax parcel identification numbers listed, to authorize the chief procurement officer to advertise for sealed bids for the sale of said property and for other purposes. It's my understanding that the department wishes to hold this paper. So I'll make the motion to hold, seconded by Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Votes closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item will be held. It takes us to resolutions, 22-R4419. And there will be an amendment to attach all of the procurement documentation, but I'll read it in the caption. A resolution by Councilmember Byron D. Amos authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute cooperative agreement number listed for radioisotope identification devices with FLIR Detection, Inc. On behalf of the mayor's Office of Emergency Preparedness, securing the city's program, utilizing General Services Administration contract number listed for a term of 2 years in an amount not to exceed $345,480.00. All equipment shall be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account number listed and for other purposes. I'll go ahead and make the motion to amend to the legislation to attach the procurement authorization memo and business registration certification for the organization. Can I get a second on that? Seconded by Dozier. All right, let's open the vote to amend.
The vote is open. Votes closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The paper is now amended. Mr. Denbrough, if you could tell us about the paper.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Felipe Denbrook. I'm the Director of Emergency Preparedness at the Mayor's Office. To give you a matter of background, about 3 years ago, Department of Homeland Security awarded a $20 million grant to the City of Atlanta, $2 million per year for 10 years from the Office of Counter Weapons of Mass Destruction. And basically what we're seeking to do is create mitigation strategy within the city and adjacent counties supporting the city, being Cobb, DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Fulton, to prevent the release of radiological and nuclear during a terrorism event. That money is going to be used to purchase the RIDs, or the radioisotopes, and it's in conjunction with a prior purchase of almost 1,300 radiological pagers and 22 radiological backpacks. So basically, considering the way things are in the city right now, as modern as we are, the airport, the CDC, one level 3 and one level 4 bio labs, and the majority of the special events that we should be getting in the next few years, it just makes sense to create that platform to mitigate radiological and nuclear threats via terrorism. Furthermore, I-20 serves as a expressway to carry radiological sources, and with that, help us create a bigger protection of the city.
All right, questions from my colleagues for Mr. Denbrock. I mean, so these are just kind of mobilized as needed for events or to certain locations. They're not permanently affixed in places, are they?
We're looking at, well, it depends on the platform that you want. The radiological pagers are going to be issued to members of the Atlanta Police Department and other departments within greater metropolitan Atlanta. The backpacks, the same with the FLIRs are going to be, with the RIDs, and they're going to be on a full-time basis on police and public safety equipment.
Other questions? All right, I'll make the motion to approve as amended. Oh, Mr. Dozier.
Oh, I was just going to second.
All right, seconded by Dozier. There's no further discussion. Let's open the vote on that paper, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved as amended. Thank you. Next item, 22-R4421, resolution by Councilmember Keisha Shawn Waits urging the Georgia General Assembly to enact legislation which prohibits the offense of commercial harassment in the state of Georgia to preserve public order through the protection of the residents and visitors to the state and for other purposes. Ms. Waits, did you want to speak to your paper? All right, there's a motion from Ms. Waits to approve. Before we take a vote on this, and I know that I've had a conversation with Mr. Pace, I just want to acknowledge that some communication that Council Member Waits has been in. This apparently is the time when the legislature and the assembly start pre-filing papers. We have a number of these papers that have moved through this year, as well as on our agenda later. I'm just wondering if perhaps at some point it'd be appropriate to have Ms. Mitchell come back and kind of make sure that the things that we've asked and we're advocating for are indeed contemplated for the legislative packet. Mr. Pace.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Theo Pace, Deputy Chief of Staff, Office of the Mayor, and that is certainly a request that we can acknowledge and have Ms. Mitchell come before the committee, and as well as meet with various council members. I know that there's been a number of pieces of legislation directed to the General Assembly throughout the course of this calendar year. So that's something definitely that we can make happen over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
I just had a question specific to this paper for the author. Commercial harassment is when buy your houses, that sort of thing, the folks that are bothering longtime residents. Is that the sort of thing that this is addressing?
Thank you, Councilmember Dozier. Essentially, I've received a number of calls from seniors who live in communities, Tyler Perry Studios, communities that are adjacent to the Beltline. They are being told things such as, I understand your property is in foreclosure, would you like to sell? And then there are the rest of us who get up to 90 phone calls a day regarding purchasing our properties. And so it seems to me to be, I think there's already something in place. In fact, Ms. Amber Robertson spoke to that, but we need approval from the General Assembly to strengthen the penalties because there are already penalties involved. But I believe, at least from what I understand, that this is a challenge statewide that we need to address. So we're going to need to get some state approval to move this forward. And I think this will be a relief to all of us who reside in the city that are getting these types of phone calls, letters, and emails and text messages to the point of harassment.
No, I absolutely agree. I just wasn't familiar with that terminology, but I absolutely support this. Thank you.
Seconding it.
All right. I will second Councilmember Waits' motion.
All right, there's a motion from Waits, seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. And Councilmember Waits, I mean, we'll lean on your experience in the state assembly to kind of guide us through the timing of things that we want to advocate for. Okay, that takes us now to item 22-R4429, resolution by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond requesting the Department of Human Resources establish a team bond to support the 2022 Atlanta Kidney Walk and for other purposes. Mr. Bond, did you want to speak to your paper?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, to the staff, this version of the paper is not representative of what I have read in. So I make scribbler's notes and corrections on what I passed to the clerk. But short of that, just make a motion to hold.
Okay. All right. There's a motion to hold. I'll second that. And then, Ms. Linda, if you can get with Councilmember Bond to make sure we get the correct version that we can substitute in at the appropriate time. So, all right, there's a motion from Bond, seconded from Juan. Let's open that vote, please. It's to hold.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item will be held. 22-R. Yes, Mr. Bond.
I need to be excused.
Thank you for letting us know. All right, thank you, Mr. Bond. Next item is 22-R4430. Just make sure I have quorum. A resolution by council members Lewis, Dozier, Winston, Waits, Westmoreland, Amos, Juan, Boone, Bond, Overstreet, and Bakhtiari expressing support for the 117th Congress's House Resolution 38-2 and Senate Resolution 790, which commemorate the Atlanta Race Massacre by honoring the victims and reaffirming the commitment of the United States Congress to combat hatred, injustice, and white supremacy, and for other purposes. Any discussion or questions from my colleagues? Mr. Dozier.
Would like to move approval.
Second.
Motion from Dozier, second by Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. 24, which is 22-R4431, resolution by council members Lewis, Dozier, Winston, Waits, Westmoreland, Amos, Juan, Boone, Bond, Overstreet, and Bakhtiari, urging the Georgia General Assembly to pass a resolution acknowledging the atrocities of the Atlanta Race Massacre of 1906 and to honor the victims and to reaffirm the state of Georgia's commitment to combat hatred, injustice, and white supremacy, and for other purposes. Any discussion on this? Motion from Dozier, second from Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. Next item, 22-R4432, a resolution by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet, urging the Georgia General Assembly to protect communities by enacting legislation to regulate corporate ownership of private homes and reduce the proliferation of investor-owned housing in the city of Atlanta and for other purposes. Any discussion or comments on this? All right, motion from Bakhtiari to approve. Is there a second? I'll second it. There's no further discussion. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. The motion carries. The item is approved. All right, we have taken care of number 26 and 27. All right, number 28, 22-R4512, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute sole source agreements number listed, Milner Technology Maintenance and Services, with Milner Technologies, Inc., pursuant to Section 2-1191 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management, Finance, and Atlanta Police, for a term of 1 year, effective April 1st, 2023 through March 31, 2024, with two one-year renewal options in an amount not to exceed $182,720.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the Fund Department organization and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Colleagues, we have an amendment to this. Let's go ahead and take care of that before we hear from the administration. It corrects the contract number in the 6th whereas clause. I'll make the motion to amend. Can I get second by Dozier? Let's open the vote to amend, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. The paper is amended. Go ahead, please. And if you introduce yourself and tell us about it.
Good afternoon, Orlando Ross, Business Relationship Manager, AIM. The purpose for our resolution is for a maintenance and support contract for Milner Technologies. The system supports both finance as well as the Department of Police. It's for 1 year with 2 one-year renewals. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I have one. I'm just, this is a first where we're being very, very proactive with the contract not starting for another 4 months. So, reason for that?
I will defer.
No, I won't. I'm not complaining. It's okay. I just wanted to acknowledge that. So, all right. I'll make the motion to approve as amended, seconded by Dozier. Let's open the vote, please.
Thank you.
So motion from Juan, second from Dozier. Sorry.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. Item is approved as amended. Next item is number 29, 22-R4513, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Department of Finance to enter into renewal number 2 with Hilltop Securities, Inc. for FC 10659 as financial advisor to the City of Atlanta for a term of 1 year effective November 8, 2022 through November 7, 2023 in an amount not to exceed $180,000.00. All contracted work to be charged and paid from all funding numbers listed herein and for other purposes. CFO, I see both of y'all. Who's taking this one?
Good afternoon
Treasurer,
again.
okay.
Courtney Knight, City Treasurer. We have engaged the firm of Hilltop Securities as our financial advisor for a number of years. We are in the middle, as I described just a while ago, of a very significant transaction for the city. We are also doing the city's first social bond. We are launching the city's first investor relations website. So there are a number of current activities underway that we felt it was important to extend the financial advisor's contract for another year.
All right, questions from my colleagues for Mr. Knight? Seeing none, is there a motion? I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved. All right, item 30 we've already dispensed with. Same with 31. Takes us to dual referred items. Oh, we did have one come out of CDHS, correct? Item number 32, 22-R4247. This is it's a resolution by Councilmember Mary Norwood as substituted by the Community Development and Human Services Committee requesting that the Department of City Planning conduct a review of the city's impact fee program regarding transportation system improvements and for other purposes. Colleagues, this came out of CDHS favorably on substitute. I guess that was yesterday. Any questions or discussion on this, Mr. Shook?
Do we know what the substitute?
I was just trying to find out. Does
The caption, Mr. Chair, it changes.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, the caption completely changed. Versus the requesting that piece.
I mean, that's fine. I'm going to support it. There may be some members here who are unaware, and this will be a timely reminder to the planning department that we do expect the sort of phase 2 set of recommendations to come forward, having already done what was styled as a sort of low-hanging fruit phase 1. But we're expecting a whole lot more, so this will serve as a good reminder.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Motion from Shook to approve, seconded by Bakhtiari. If there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This item is approved on substitute. All right, I'm going to keep moving on. All right, so papers held in committee, we have 3 coming off. First one is item 46. This is Resolution 22-R4335, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the approval and adoption of the DeKalb County Service Delivery Strategy, authorizing the mayor to execute the DeKalb County Service Delivery Strategy Agreement on behalf of the City of Atlanta and for other purposes. There is a substitute. I'll make the motion to bring that forward. Seconded by Dozier. It adds language to clarify authorization of the agreement and binding clauses and attaches exhibits. So we have a motion from Juan, second by Dozier. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is now before us. Mr. Williams.
Hi, Jordan Williams, Department of City Planning. This resolution will authorize the mayor to execute a new service delivery strategy agreement with DeKalb County. These agreements are required of local governments under state law under certain circumstances. In this case, DeKalb County is updating their comprehensive land use plan. So Georgia Department of Community Affairs requires us to update the matrix, showing all the different services and who was responsible for what within the DeKalb portion of the city of Atlanta.
All right, questions for Mr. Williams? I was just commenting, I believe Councilmember Bakhtiari and I are the only ones that have DeKalb County in our districts, but I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve on substitute. Seconded by Bakhtiari. If there's no further discussion, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
We are the delivery strategy.
The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on substitute. Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, the next item is, we have a substitute for it. It is 22-01740. I'll read in the new caption and make the motion. It's an ordinance by council members Shook and Juan, is substituted by Finance Executive Committee, amending the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget by anticipating and appropriating an amount not to exceed $1,026,334.52 from the council president and council member carry forward accounts with a net amount of $937,943.93 to be returned to the council president and council member carry forward accounts for the true up of the fiscal year 2023 carry forward balances and for other purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute forward. Need a second, please. Bakhtiari, a second. Let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. Substitute is before us. Ms. Kempson Wright.
Good afternoon, council members. In mid-July, you received correspondence from me regarding your FY23 adopted budgets and the amounts in your carry-forward account. That amount was an estimate based on what the Department of Finance loaded in the budget tool in early April for the then proposed FY23 budget. Their estimate was based on your office's average monthly spend to reflect the potential available balance at the end of fiscal year 2022. This legislation trues up your carry-forward account balances to reflect the actual amount based on the Department of Finance ADJ1 closeout of fiscal year 2022. I ask that you move this forward on condition, favorably on condition, to allow me an opportunity to speak with each respective elected official prior to Monday's meeting.
Are there questions or comments for Ms. Kempson Wright? All right, I'll make the motion to approve on condition, as she stated, that Ms. Kempson Wright completes her conversations with remaining council members. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Bakhtiari. Discussion?
I just think Ms. Kempson Wright is the best, so thanks.
Thank you, council member.
Wow, she's not going to siphon money off the audit accounts for that, so I tried. No kidding. All right, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on substitute. And then item 50, 22-R4341. I'll read in the new caption and then make the motion to bring it forward. It's a resolution by Councilmember Howard Shook, is substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to refund customers for overpayments to water and sewer accounts in an amount of $137,534.10. All funds to be charged to and paid from fund, department, and organization and account numbers listed and for other purposes. Motion from Juan, second by Bakhtiari to bring forward the substitute.
The vote is open. The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The substitute is before us. I'm now going to make a motion to amend the paper to put the right council member name, the current council member names in to the table in the back. I believe that's should be how it's done, right? This lists council members Brown and Matzik. So I'll make that motion to amend. Can I get a second, please? Second. Seconded by Dozier. Let's open that motion to amend.
The vote's closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The paper is amended. I'll now make the motion to approve the paper on substitute as amended. Seconded by Bakhtiari. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The item is approved on substitute as amended. All right. Ms. Lindo, I believe that takes care of all of our legislative items.
We do have the walk-in
Oh, the
legislation.
walk-in. Yes, I'm sorry. All right, this is Elms ID number 3117. It's a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into amendment number 1 to add the Department of Enterprise Asset Management as an authorized user of the agreement WestNet Turnout Timers Special Procurement Agreement number listed with WestNet Inc. on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management to install turnout timers at fire stations 36 and 37 in an amount not to exceed $234,288.15. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Mr. Davis, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
No, that's okay. Good afternoon again. Yeah, so Chris Davis, Department of Enterprise Assets Management. So the purpose of this special procurement is it's really to be able to take advantage of an existing contract that we have and get deemed added to the program for the 2 fire stations that we're delivering and the additional fire station that we'll be providing throughout the next couple of years. This will save the city approximately $65,000 by us having a direct contract with WestNet. WestNet is the sole source system that's installed in all the existing fire stations, and it's part of the requirement for being able to monitor and keep timekeepers of the service providers. So the purpose of this is to be able to save the money and to add us to the contract.
And colleagues, when they approached me, the reason why I allowed this walk-in to come in, it is public safety related, and there is a time sensitivity on it. So with that, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Dozier. If there's no further discussion, let's open that vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, the motion carries. This item is approved. That was our final legislative piece, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
All right, I have one announcement, then I'll open up for other general remarks from other colleagues. Just a reminder that our committee is convening a work session tomorrow, October 13th at 1 p.m. here in committee room, and this will be with the Fulton County Tax Assessor's Office to review the property assessment process. Finance Department has prepared some data as well over of the tax digest, both residential and commercial, over the last 15 years. So we're just going to kind of dive in and open the conversation about that. That's my announcement. Any other discussion or announcements? Good to the order, comments from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.